So today we are here with Dr. Laura Pressley from Austin, Texas, and we're going to ask her a few questions about what's going on here in Austin with fluoride and her fight to remove it from the water supply here in Austin. She's a pioneer as well. She's started a bottled water company here, the Pure Rain Corporation, which we'll have her discuss that in a little bit. But just for the record, if you could just state your name and spell it for the transcription.
Laura, L-A-U-R-A, Pressley, P-R-E-S-S-L-E-Y.
And tell us a little bit about your background as far as your professional career and maybe even your collegiate, because I know you've got you have some PhDs and that sort of thing. So just if you don't mind.
Sure. My background, my educational background is I have a PhD in physical chemistry from the University of Texas at Austin. I did my undergraduate chemical Bachelor of Science in Chemistry at University of Houston. So I've been a Texas girl for a long time. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and went to high school here. So I've been here all my life. And when I was in Houston, I completed my bachelor's degree in chemistry, and I was a single mother, and I was trying to decide what to do. And I had several professors who approached me and said, Laura, you know, you should go to graduate school. And I asked them, I'm a single mom, and how many single mothers are in the PhD programs? And they're, oh, tons of them. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, a little gullible. And I get to graduate school, and there are no single moms but me. So my daughter was 3 years old when we started, and it was a long road, but it was worth it.
I bet.
It was really worth it. Chemistry, I love chemistry because the way it makes my brain think when I try to solve a difficult problem or analyze a issue, and it just really turns my brain on, and I love it.
Great. And what are you doing now as far as career-wise? Like, where have you...
Yes, so I started out in the semiconductor industry here in Austin, and I worked for Motorola in their research division, and I was an etch engineer designing processes to etch semiconductor chips, and I have 4 patents, U.S. patents, and multiple publications on semiconductor processing. And so I spent 17 years in the semiconductor industry here. And I worked on contamination improvement and yield engineering. So it really kind of laid the groundwork for what I'm doing now is I have a business, Pure Rain bottled rainwater, where we capture rainwater and we purify it, and it's the most pure water, fluoride-free, chemical-free water. And so that background in semiconductors, looking at the contaminants, and it really kind of laid that groundwork for my business.
And you mentioned contaminants in that industry. What was it that stuck out? Was fluoride a major part?
Computer chips, there are a lot of reasons they don't work. And so as you try to improve the yields on a wafer, let's say there's a wafer and you have 100 die on there, 100 chips, and if you're only getting 50 of those die working, you really have a huge amount of work to go figure out why those other 50 aren't working. And sometimes it can be chemical contamination, fluorine, sodium. You can have actual particles that are causing conducting lines on the chip to not work, or causing resistance issues due to contamination. So there are a lot of root causes, and a chip can't tell you why it doesn't work. So it's almost like an archaeology project to go and find out why that chip's not working and do deprocessing because it can't tell you itself. You have to go do the engineering and the data mining to go figure it out.
So it must have been an exciting career. I mean, rewarding anyway to see, you know, processes from start to finish. And
absolutely, and getting that feedback of the project that you worked on and the teams that we put together to go analyze the data and then find the root cause and then put the fix in place and go validate the fix. It's a nice closed loop of very rewarding.
I bet.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was that work ethic that probably laid the groundwork for your new journey here. And what got you involved in the fluoride removal from public water? Let's get into that a little bit.
That's a good question. What got me involved in fluoride-free Austin and trying to get the fluoride out of the tap water is I have been very sick. And I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism about 10 years ago. And what was interesting to me is there was no family history in my background that explained why I had this thyroid illness. I knew that I had fluorosis in my teeth, which is the white discoloration, and there are streaks of that in my teeth, so I know that when I was a child I was overexposed to fluoride, and that's the evidence.
So you learned that early on then?
I knew, yes, and I knew I had these white streaks, and my dentist, you know, through the years explained what that was. Those teeth are very brittle, and so I have cavities more frequently in those teeth than other ones that don't have the evidence of the fluorosis. So I knew that, and so I kind of had that in the back of my mind, and as I was doing some research, I was on thyroid medication for about 10 years, and doing the research on the web and asking some physicians, fluoride is an irritant to your thyroid. Your thyroid wants iodine, and if it doesn't get iodine at the concentrations that it needs, then it gets whatever is closest that you're providing in the environment. And if you look at the periodic table, being a chemist, it's very obvious to me that if you look at the periodic table, you see that fluoride, chlorine, bromine, and iodine are all in the same column. And that means they have very similar electronic structure and reactivity. So that's why your thyroid will uptake fluoride and chlorine when you're not giving it enough iodine. So then you get, it doesn't work, your thyroid doesn't work correctly, and it has hypothyroidism. And that was what I was having.
What were some of your side effects?
Oh, a bunch of, I had a lot of different medical issues that came with hypothyroidism. One of the symptoms is feeling very cold, hair loss, concentration issues. It really controls your metabolism. So I had gained about 10 to 15 pounds, which is very unusual. I was very athletic my whole life and never was overweight. So I gained weight. I was sleeping a lot. Again, your metabolism is tuned down. Right. And I was sleeping. And I remember I had memory issues also. I remember I was in North Austin driving, and my husband looked at me and he goes, "You don't know how to get home." And I'm like, "I know. I don't know where I'm at. I can't remember how to get home." We were shopping, driving in this area that we do shopping all the time. And that was the last straw for me, because I'm a pretty bright woman.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was forgetting data in meetings that I would never have done before, years before. And so that was the last straw. And so I started taking medication, and I saw a doctor and was diagnosed with hypothyroidism.
How did the medication work out?
It was difficult. It took several years to kind of tune the medication. I was on Armour Thyroid. I wanted a natural supplement instead of, you know, the chemically isolated Synthroid medications. So I took Armour Thyroid for years and years, but it never could control the symptoms totally. So that's when I got really frustrated. And I said, all right, let's figure out the root cause. I'm an engineer. I figure out root causes to all these issues
right?
all the time. Why can't I focus on my own self, my body that's broken, that's not working?
Right.
So I did that, and fluoride came up. And I was adamant. I said, okay, when I figured this out, I'm not drinking any more water with fluoride. I'm not eating foods with fluoride. I'm not cooking my pasta, rice, and you know, soups with that fluoridated water. So I completely took it out of my diet. It took about 6 months. My symptoms became very non-existent, and I stopped taking my medication. I've been off medication for 3 years now.
Wow, congratulations.
Yes.
My God, I just got the goosebumps on that one.
But it's true.
It's great.
It's so true, and people don't realize that, you know, in our tap water, there's a lot of chemicals in our tap water. Fluoride's only one. And there are a lot of health effects, even with small trace amounts of these chemicals. And when's the last time you went to a doctor and you said, you know, I'm feeling a little tired, and I have stomach issues, and I have migraines, and I'm swelling with allergies. And I go, oh, you know, these chemicals in your tap water can cause this. Get off your tap water for a couple months, come back to me, and then I'll decide to give you a medication. They never do that. Okay, they never do.
Right away, right?
They write out a prescription to put a drug, a chemical on top of the other chemical things that you're having issues with, and we never get to the root cause. And so I found the root cause, and I'm off my thyroid medicine. I'm off allergy medication. I was on medication for years and years for allergies, swelling. migraines, it's all gone.
And all of this from just removing the fluoride.
Fluoride and the other chemicals in my tap water.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned your foods, and I wanted to kind of stress to our audience how important that was, even, excuse me, even so much as cooking with tap water, because a lot of people are under the impression that, you know, when I cook with it, it's probably killing or evaporating, you know, through the process of distillation, but it's really not. It goes right into the food, does it not, once you cook with it?
So once you raise the temperature, the reactions always typically increase with temperature. And when you cook, what you do, you concentrate those elements and those contaminants into the food. Fluoride doesn't boil off. These other chemical contaminants do not boil off. And so they get concentrated in your food, and you eat that. And so we don't really realize the impact that cooking and how we cook our food and what we cook it with the water, how it affects us, our health.
Yeah, I think it's really important. My wife and I, we do the same thing now. We're using distilled.
Good.
Paul and I, for the film, we tested quite a bit of bottled water companies.
Yes,
and there was, you know, traces of fluoride in everything.
Absolutely.
We tested. And even some of the distilled, there are small trace elements of it.
Yes.
So it's almost like you can't fully get away. Even with the RO systems that we've tested, and everybody still had small traces of the fluoride.
That's right. You have to not start with it. And it's easy to just take it out of the water supply if you just have the will and, you know, the information and the education of the population and the citizens to know what's going on. Yeah, there are a lot of bottled waters with fluoride. Distillation is an interesting chemical process. There are chemical compounds called azeotropes that distillation will not get out. And then you've got reverse osmosis, which gets out about 90%, 95%, depending on the size of the contaminant or the atom. Fluoride is very, very small. It's one of the smallest, most electronegative elements on the periodic table, and that is the most difficult thing to get out from a distillation standpoint and reverse osmosis.
Yeah, that's
very hard.
We're learning, because, you know, a lot of folks say, oh, just drink distilled, you'll be fine, but it's not just that, because, I mean, your orange juice, your milk, regardless of anything. How
you water your garden.
Right.
Okay, that's a big issue, fluoridated water in your garden.
Right, talk about that.
I have an organic garden, and we filter our water.
Prior to
watering, we use a shower filter, and it doesn't get the fluoride out, but it's the best we can do. If you know, imagine trying to water your garden with reverse osmosis, that'd be very difficult. Yeah. So really, the cities and the municipalities just need to get the fluoride out, so we can have organic gardens, organic meals, and fluoride's not organic. I think that needs to be kind of highlighted a little bit in that community that's very aware of that. Pesticides operate in a lot of cases because they have fluoridated compounds, because they're disinfectants and they kill bugs, and it's not good for us either.
Absolutely. You know, it's how has the community here in Austin received this whole free fluoride movement?
Yeah, the community in Austin, we are continuing to educate. Fluoride Free Austin has done a lot of work over the last 3 years educating city council members and also the general population in Austin. And what's interesting with our case, you know, there are three kind of what I would call stages of influence to get fluoride out of your water in your city and in your community. First is provide the science background to your city council members, because the city council members are the ones making the decision to keep it or take it out. Provide them with the science, but a lot of city council members don't have the scientific background to be able to discern, well, the CDC or the dentist tell me fluoride's very healthy, and then you're showing me all of these technical papers that say that's not healthy, and you have the hypothyroidism, cancer, bone cancer issues, fluorosis in children, IQ degradation in children, all this stuff that's come out in the last 10 years, and it's new information. Sometimes council members don't have the scientific background to make in their mind the decision between those two conflicting sets of data. So what we've done in Fluoride Free Austin, we've kind of taken a step back and said, you know what, you don't really have to understand that detailed science. Let's go to your heart. You know, when you go to the doctor, that the physician will never give an adult, a 6'5" man, and a 3-year-old child the same dose of a medicine, let's say amoxicillin. They won't do that. They will adjust the dose. Why aren't we adjusting the dose for fluoride? We don't do that. It's a one-size-fits-all. concentration that comes out of your tap in a glass of water, a 6-foot tall man and a little 3-year-old child gets the same amount. Everybody understands that's wrong. That is the one point that gets people in their heart, and they don't have to understand the science behind that. They have experiences that they can draw on. So that is where we've kind of backed up and said, okay, council members, you may not agree or understand the data. Let's talk about the dosage control and the impact on infants and children. And that has made a huge impact for us, where we've backed up and said, okay, we're not going to get it out of the water right away. Let's put a warning on our water bill that says that infants and children, parents need to be aware that you could cause fluorosis, other issues, and that there's no dosage control for these children, small kids. And that has made an impact. So right now in Austin, we have tried that approach, and the council has agreed to put a warning once a year into our water bills, and then also post these warnings up at WIC centers, Women, Infants, and Children's Centers, and also neighborhood centers. So we've made progress.
Good.
And it's not where we want to be, but we're not giving up. But once you educate families on how it impacts their children that they love, that's the first step, and then we can go down the next path.
And it's funny you mentioned, children, and it's really what, I guess, spawned this journey of truth for Paul and I. I mean, personally myself, it was, I took a look at the rise in neurological disorders today, and I know we had discussed that over the phone a little bit, and how the children are impacted, and we're creating a culture of neurologically damaged, children, and who are, is going to be left to look after.
That's right.
Who's going to bear the burden? And you mentioned the city councils, how bringing this information to them. And in Arizona, I know there's some counterparts, some friends of ours that have let the city councils know of the contaminations in their blood levels themselves, where the barium is 25 times where it should be, and 60,000 times the aluminum level in their blood. So, from what I understand, once the councils are alerted of this, now the liability falls into their lap.
Yes.
And they can be held accountable if they don't act.
That's right. Once the council has the information, I mean, they can always say, well, we didn't understand the information, but what's really critical about the fluoridation is the chemical supplier of the fluoride, the hydrofluorosilicic acid, has now put a health warning on their material safety data sheet. As a chemist, I've looked at scores of material safety data sheets, and never in my career have I seen a warning for children in an MSDS, material safety data sheet. What happens is the companies that's producing this chemical realizes they have a revenue stream that's a little risky for them from a liability standpoint on how their customers are using this chemical. And so they've now put a warning in their material safety data sheet, warning for fluorosis, osteosclerosis if exposure occurs during enamel formation. There are no children working in these chemical plants. There are no children being chemical handlers. So this warning is for the end user. And so we've presented this to the city council, and they have now been alerted that their own supplier has put a warning. And this is where we came across and said, you now need to put a warning, at least for children that you've received from your supplier. You need to put that downstream. So now the liability is on them too.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think that's a result of a lot of data that's coming out now in the last 5 to 10 years, and a lot of pressure that's coming from the different communities to end fluoridation, and because of the health issues.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's great. What was alarming to me throughout our little search here and journey is, we realized that the European community is somewhat almost completely fluoride free. I mean, I think they're right around 98% free of fluoride. And Dr. Kennedy pointed out to us the bottled water industry as far as labeling is concerned. Yes. And you go to Mexico, they'll have, they'll list the fluoride, all the elements, the trace elements that are in the waters as they do in Europe as well. But here in America, we just have fat content or
That's right. And you have to go, if you want to look at what, chemicals or trace amount of contaminants are in different bottled waters, you have to go on the company's websites and go look up their information. And in some case, they won't even provide it to you. I've requested several from several companies their chemical testing, and they will not even supply it.
Yeah, we've called quite a few too, and they're like, "What? You want to know what?"
Yeah.
So let's talk about. I want to.
Can I say one thing about the fluoride?
Yes.
One of the members of Fluoride Free Austin is a registered pharmacist, and he has indicated to us that, or at least made us aware that the actual active ingredient in Prozac is fluoride.
I've heard this before.
Prozac is 30% fluoride. And so it's interesting that, we're having these neurological disorders, and we're having IQ issues and ADD issues in children. And it makes sense that if, it's affecting our brains and affecting our pineal gland, that,
That's something we got to talk about too, because again, that's another reason what set us off was the children being injured. Myself, what really got me going was the vaccination act of, but we'll discuss that another time. But neurologically, what's happening? What is the fluoride doing to us neurologically?
Yeah, I think as someone who has gotten off of fluoride, I can tell that my thought processes and my concentration is higher. Mm-hmm. And I remember having almost these, what I would call a fog and a kind of cloudy brain, and not be able to remember things. And that was my severe symptom mm-hmm. of my hypothyroidism, was memory issues. But I had this kind of in between of just being cloudy, and that is gone. I don't have that anymore. So I can imagine what it's doing to children whose brains are not completely formed yet. It's an outrage.
Yeah, and all you got to do is look at what's happening with the rise. I mean, in the state of California, I've read somewhere that it's, I believe, 1 in every 58.
Yes.
Will end up on the autistic spectrum.
Yes.
We have ADD all the way to full-blown autism and everything in between. And in addition to that, we see Alzheimer's too, which is,
yes,
again, I think connected to aluminum they have in the past. Right now, again, it's what I've read, and I can't say that I know completely for sure, but it seems like it makes sense, and that's what really set us off on this journey. Was, again, we kept finding these metal contaminants, and that in correlation to what's going on neurologically with everybody.
Yes.
And it was alarming, to say the least, And
we have this pharmacist who's on Fluoride Free Austin. He says, if you want to push your "I don't give a damn" button, drink fluoride.
Yeah.
That's what he equates it to Prozac. It's like,
that's what I say to people.
If you want to push your "I don't give a damn" button, drink some fluoride.
I said, if this doesn't bother you, if this doesn't wake you up, then you can thank the fluoride, because it's doing its job.
That's right. And it's funny, when we have these council meetings and our Fluoride Free Austin people show up, they are active. They're not on fluoride, so very vocal, and it's unusual. Mm-hmm. And then you'll have the dentist come in and say how safe it is, and then there'll be, this banter back and forth, and then they'll have to calm the chambers down. But there's a lot of passion of people that aren't drinking fluoride because I think we're awake.
What do you think the incentive is behind all these dentists and all these, who maybe really haven't? Are they just regurgitating what the CDC is stating, or I mean, is it are these guys coming with their own, evidence, case evidence, or that they've brought to the table, or is it just?
It's all of the above. It's a very difficult question of why dentists aren't more aware, and I think they don't have the time to actually go look at the research. It's been ingrained in them from when they were in dental school, and to go relearn something once you've already accepted a fact, and it takes a little strength of your ego to say I was wrong. So I think there's part of that comes into play. I think mostly they just don't have the time to go look at the information and the more recent data and research, and they're busy.
I remember being a child and going through my, my fluoride treatments as a kid, the goop that they would put in the mouthpieces, and I can just always remember the nurse running in the room, don't swallow that. Have you swallowed that? Don't swallow that. And they're constantly sucking it out and spit it all out, make sure you get it all out of your mouth, and rinse, 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 rinse. Toothpaste. Labels on the side of it, warning, pea-size amounts if swallowed.
Don't swallow it.
1 part per million. The same amount of fluoride in that pea-size amount is in your a liter of tap water.
That's right.
So I commend you for trying to get that warning label on the water bill. Let's just hope, you know, the community reads it. And it's
Yes.
a shame that it's only once a year, but at least hopefully they can.
Yep. One of the other things we're doing in Austin, the next campaign cycle for City Council, we're making this a campaign issue. We're asking the Sierra Club, the other environmental groups are going to start putting this on their questionnaire to the City Council candidates. What is your stance on fluoride? What is your understanding? Would you get it out? You know, given, you know, when you're presented with the health information. So we're going to make this a political issue. I think this is what needs to happen across the country, that these council members, because it really sits with your city council, and make those council members go on the record of what they think about it and elect people that understand the details and want to get it out, and because there's no dosage control. Everyone understands that. And that is, to me, like I said, you don't have to be a chemist, you don't have to understand all the science, and these council members maybe don't understand and don't feel confident in themselves to make that decision, but they understand that point. That's the bottom line.
That's the big aha moment.
That's the big aha, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, it makes sense.
Also, you know, the other thing is there are minority groups. You know, if you look at the dentists, they say, well, this is the reason we're putting fluoride for these economically challenged populations, typically African Americans or Hispanics. And the fluorosis that impacts Hispanics and African Americans is 2 to 3x higher than Caucasians. So they are affected more negatively. So we're trying to help them, but we're hurting them. And even LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, has come out with a resolution and said, thanks but no thanks. We do not want fluoridation. It's mass medication, and it affects our population more negatively due to diabetes, hypothyroidism, bone issues, children issues, and we've said no. So LULAC has come out and said no. Again, that's some political pressure. If you can't get to the councils with science, then the second step is political pressure. Right. Okay, and then third is legal action. All of those three things need to be on the table, and communities have to be willing and have the fortitude to do all three of them.
Is it a matter of challenging these corporations, and, you know, as far as, you know, disrupting the money flow, really?
Absolutely.
I mean,
there's a big money flow that'll get disrupted, and revenue streams that, you know, we're going to say no to. The other thing, that pressure that our council has on them, which is very frustrating, is the CDC is the big pusher of fluoridation. And a lot of these councils, especially ours, gets a lot of grants from the CDC. Maybe not for fluoridation, but for other things like smoking cessation, a lot of things. And so I think the councils are worried about biting the hand that feeds them. They get these grants, they're dependent on them from the federal government, and so they're a little hesitant politically to say no to this funding stream for the city.
And from what I've understood and what I've read, as far as, you know, looking at fluoridated communities, it hasn't done anything to help with cavities and tooth decay.
That's right.
It's
the data shows that fluoridated and non-fluoridated communities have similar dental carie rates,
right.
And that's the bottom line. And, you know, the mechanism that, and dentists will tell you this, the ones that know the information, that if fluoride does work in any form or fashion, it's topically. It's on the surface. And so why are we bathing in this water? Why are we drinking it, going into our stomachs, into our bloodstream? Why are we watering our gardens with it? Why are we, you know, there's so much, you can do this topically in a different way.
Right.
It's a lot more economical.
Well, that's how I remember getting it done when I was a kid.
Right.
I mean, with the topical treatment on our teeth, you know, and even there's a lot of dentists out there that'll tell you that doesn't even have any benefit whatsoever. Again, but
yes.
I remember you had mentioned we have some lawsuits in Maryland and California.
Yes. So there is a recent lawsuit in Maryland. It's a federal lawsuit. A woman who believed the medical establishment at the time when her daughter was an infant. She gave her daughter 90% of her diet, intake of water, was this fluoridated baby water. And so the daughter grew up with severe fluorosis, and to get that corrected, dental restoration is about $100,000, and they can't bear that burden. So they are suing Nestle and Gerber for these fluoridated baby waters, and this, you know, it's misrepresentation of you know, of the benefits, and it affected this girl pretty severely. And there are a lot of kids that are like this. I have fluorosis in my teeth, and those are the teeth that are brittle, and I have cavities in, and so I know I was overexposed as a child.
You know, I kind of understand where they might come to the conclusion that fluoride strengthens teeth because it does accumulate in these calcium-enriched, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Where, yes, your teeth may become a little bit denser, but the tensile strength is gone.
Yeah, and there's a small process window. So you do one thing, but if you're outside of that optimal dose, and everybody's dose is different. That's what's critical here. Your dose, my dose, an African American's dose, a Hispanic, we all have genetic differences. And that process window may be this big, but you know what? They've decided that everybody gets the same, and that's where the problems happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, good for the dental industry, right? I guess as far as being carpenters.
Seems like my teeth with fluorosis have more cavities.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
Gosh.
It's the truth.
Baby water. We tested it, and in addition to, you know, because I had a friend who's got a child, and he came over to our house and he plops down this big bottle of, you know, baby water, purified baby water, fluoride added, and I said to
little
him,
cartoons on it, little blocks.
Right, right. And I said, your child is what, 6 months? Where are his teeth? I mean, and first of all, the first set he's going to get aren't going to stay in his head. He's not going to have his permanent teeth until 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, right? What are you doing? Where's the topical benefit on his gums? I mean, you know, and it started sinking in, and I said, first of all, the water has fluoride in it anyway. Now they're adding on top of the fluoride.
That's right.
And it just really kind of scared us. And that one we tested had, I think, the highest part per million in it, right? It was the baby water.
Isn't that horrible? It's just misinformation and disinformation. It's really sad. If you look at, you know, breast milk, I know you've probably heard this several times before. There are almost 0 levels of fluoride in breast milk. And this is why we wanted the warning for infants, because they're the most at risk. They drink their weight in fluids, in water, within 2 or 3 days. If you and I did that, we'd be drinking 22 liters a day of water. We don't do that. That's the dose argument and the dose concern, because infants will drink so much fluid and they get that higher concentration than we would ever get. And so the fluoride in the tap water is not tuned for them. It may be tuned for someone who's 5'5", 140 pounds. There's a lot of us who are outside that distribution. And really the CDC, when we've asked, how did you pick this level of 0.7 part per million to put in the water? Where's the data that said this is the optimal, and these groups are outside the distribution that we're going to be concerned about? Where's that data? Because that's how chemistry is done. That doesn't exist. Okay? They just picked it. So 1.2 part per million, that was, you know, for 40-something years that we did this. You know, in January 2011, they said, oh, it's too high. Trust us now with 0.7. Well, how can I trust you when you don't have credibility, when you got it wrong for the last 40 to 60 years? How can I trust you now? I can't, because there's no single dose that is good for everybody. And if you are causing issues with one group of people at the risk of another, no thank you.
I think it should be something that's not forced, but you know, you should have the choice whether or not you want to.
There should be informed consent with all medication.
That's the word.
Absolutely, and we don't have that right now.
Yeah, the choice should be up to the individual, and I personally believe that it shouldn't be forced. And what is the term?
Absolutely, there needs to be informed consent. We have that with all other medications, and you know, when we go to the doctor, he or she gives us the information of what the side effects are going to be. With fluoride, there is no informed consent, and there is no safe dose for this one-size-fits-all medication that they're doing to us. We have to have informed consent.
It's funny, you mentioned, you know, the CDC and how they recently lowered to 0.7. I believe the EPA still has 4 parts, right?
4.0, yes.
As still considered safe. It's like, why is anybody like putting these guys in check? These regulatory agencies that just don't
Right.
Nobody's jiving. I mean,
Nobody's
if the FDA saying
even at the 4.0 part per million, you'll have athletes during the summer, let's say football players in high school, that will drink gallons of water a day in the summer, getting ready for their season. They're exceeding that 4 part per million. Okay, they are. This is where there's no dose control piece. You've got athletes who will go over even that 4.0 EPA kind of recommended upper limit, and then you've got infants that are just way over exposed from the concentration for their body weight.
What do you know about food? As far as I know, a lot of foods out there contain fluoride.
Yes, naturally they do. I mean, teas are notorious. I don't know the concentrations, but teas have very high levels of fluoride.
Cheerios, I've heard.
Oh, really? I'm not familiar with that. I don't doubt
cereals, a lot of cereals and that sort of thing.
Well, the pesticide, foods that are not organic are going to be high in fluoride just because of the pesticide exposure. That's true.
In addition to, I would think, spraying the crops with these pesticides, which can contain the fluoride as well, the water they're watering them with is probably most likely.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different sources that we're being hit with pesticides. If you're not eating organic food, the foods with pesticides have fluoride in them. Your teas you drink, everybody likes to drink, hot tea or iced tea, when it's hot outside. So you've got teas that have it. You have, there's just a lot of places that you're getting it.
Right.
I think that as human beings, we do get a sense of what's good for us. And we're able to discern information that makes sense if it's within our own experience. And I think when we talk about fluoride to people that don't have a lot of technical background, that it's very simple for them to understand that their bodies should be mostly exposed to natural things in the environment. And fluoride is not a natural thing the way we provide it in our tap water. It's a chemical that is very toxic, and even though it's at low concentrations, it does have these side effects for people that are sensitive. But as human beings, we understand when things are natural and good for us. We have this discernment that it's just your intuition. And the way this fluoride is being provided to us in our tap water, this is a very toxic chemical. It's not naturally occurring calcium fluoride or sodium fluoride. That's kind of naturally in certain water supplies, natural water supplies from the ground. Our bodies know when things are natural, and this fluoridation of our tap water is not a natural thing, and our bodies understand that.
One of the arguments I hear quite a bit is, fluoride's a natural, element. It's one of the most abundant things in the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, and I come back and say, well, it is naturally in different rock deposits, but so is uranium and arsenic and lead. They're all natural.
Right.
Okay, I don't want to drink those either.
Right.
So, always go back to what's in breast milk for infants. If it's not in breast milk, we're not supposed to have it.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
And
you think about women's bodies, they're trying to prevent that from getting across to the infant, and nature didn't get it wrong.
That's right. I remember Dr. Kennedy telling us that you could poison a mother to death with fluoride, and the breast milk will still be 0.007, I believe, or something. Right. It's like just
very small.
Small traces.
We're not supposed to get it.
Yeah. Solutions.
Solutions. There are 3 stages of educating your council. One is the science. If that doesn't get you where you need, which is kind of what we have happened to us in Austin, you need to go backwards a little bit and go to kind of the core of the dose control argument. And political pressure, people putting pressure. And then if that doesn't work, you've got the legal avenues. But before your council takes your fluoride out, you have a choice. Those of us that have the economic means, we can purchase water or filters or reverse osmosis purification systems that will get as much of the fluoride out as technologically possible with today's, what we have today available to us, and be conscious of the foods that have pesticides and the fluoride source with the pesticides, and then food, tea, different components like that, and get those out of your diet. If you are seeing that you have issues, you have thyroid, 20% of women have hypothyroidism. Okay,
you don't even know it.
It's amazing. And you talk about obesity in children because your thyroid controls your metabolism. So imagine children, we worry about, what they're eating. What about what they're drinking? You put more fluids in your body than you eat food. We worry about organic food, but where's your organic water? Okay, there's no category for organic water. None of those bottled waters on the market would even meet the criteria of organic, which means no chemicals added. Okay? So your water is the number one most important thing you put in your body from a volume standpoint for your health. So the choices we have, if we have the ability financially to purchase these filters and these purification systems, it is the most important investment you could make for your family. Forego the fancy television or the fancy shoes or whatever. Make sure we prioritize our water.
Yeah, well put.
Yeah.
I tell people too, consumerism, hit them in the wallets. If you can't politically get through to your local politicians, well, every bottled water has a phone number, a consumer number on the side of it. Every product does.
Yes.
Call them up and let them know. We learned from Senator Kennedy, Senator Johnson, Karen Johnson we interviewed, and she had said, when we had 5 to 7 phone calls on an issue coming to our office, that was priority of the day. Like just people calling up with issues.
That's the
and that's
number.
all it took, 5 to 7 people calling on the same issue. And she was a congresswoman as well, so that kind of made me step back and go, wow, really, you don't need 1 million people to call them, you only need a few handful. And so if you're stuck on a certain bottled water or product, and hold them accountable. Pick up the phone, call that number, say, hey, using fluoridated water, or because is organic food organic if it's watered with contaminated water? Is it because it's going to take on the fluoride, right?
It will. It'll uptake it. Yeah.
So it's huge. It's so important.
And we should vote with our pocketbook. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And I buy organic food. And I drink the most pure water, and I use filters that are made in the U.S. because I know the quality of those. And
so just reducing your exposure.
Reducing your exposure.
Yeah, and there's a number of ways
we can prioritize that. We think our food and what we put in our body is in the same category of you want to pay the least amount possible. And I disagree with that philosophy because your body gets you where you want to be, and it is your future. And so you really need to invest in yourself, in your food, in what you're drinking, and more than you are your clothes or your electronics or your car. It is the priority. That's
right. That's really well put. It's true too, and you can't take shortcuts on your health. You can on your clothes. I mean, I shop at Target.
Exactly.
I'm not a fancy schmancy guy. I'd rather, pay a little extra for I buy organic orange juice now. It's like $7 a half gallon, but it's the best,
Yes.
And I'd rather put the money into that myself personally.
Yes. And people should consider organic gardens too, as much as you can. It's very worthwhile. We have an organic garden, and I've got watermelons and broccoli and arugula and spinach. And instead of going to the store, I go in my backyard. I don't have to get in the car. And it's not a huge garden. And, the seasons come and go, and some things aren't available because, or we have a drought and there's issues. You got to supplement with other means. And I use compost tea to fertilize. I don't use pesticides and stuff like that. So people really should consider that. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah. My wife and I are doing, I know Jen, our sound girl, has her own little organic garden, and Paul's working on his, and we're doing ours as well.
Yeah, it's
Trying
fun.
it out. It's fun. We got our little buds, and we're like, oh, look at the tomatoes, and so.
And it works. What's interesting to me is I don't have to spray anything. If you really provide it with the nutrients and the good water, the bugs don't eat it because the plant is strong and it's resilient. And I have a peach tree that we produced a lot of little peaches this year, and people were surprised I didn't have to spray it. I'm like, no, because I gave it you know,
Right stuff.
the fertilizer, the natural fertilizer, and it only gets unfluoridated water. I've never watered my peach tree with fluoride water. We do rainwater or the filtered through our fluoride filter for my peach tree.
Oh, smart.
So that gets, you know, kid glove treatment, but I didn't have to spray anything.
Yeah.
It works.
That's great. Talk about this rainwater. This, your new venture
Sure,
here, which I'm really excited about.
And I really try not to do this, so use it as judiciously as you want, but I really try to keep my, you know, like I'm not, I want to come across more credible on these issues than pushing my water.
Okay,
so.
well, we will. I mean, but I think it's
so
great.
make it a very minor thing.
It will. It'll be, you know, we'll mention it in the solutions, and I just think it's great because, you know, we do need to start.
Yeah. It is a fluoride-free water.
Right up
it's
our
one
alley.
of the few ones that are fluoride-free.
And that's important. It says chemical-free. I think that's great.
Yes, and Alex Jones recommended that we put fluoride-free on our label, and we actually have it on the back.
I see it says chemical-free.
It says chemical-free.
But
I know.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. The fluoride-free.
Fluoride-free. So we put it. We put that on in the text in the
Fluoride-free,
back.
right there. The results.
That was because of Alex Jones's feedback.
It's smart. I mean,
and it's a big market now. People are starting to
Yes,
see
and it gets
realize-
across our message, our fluoride-free Austin message across the state, where, you know, fluoride-free. Wonder why? This is a healthy water. It's in this healthy store. People start to make those, you know, if not unconscious connections, but some will make conscious connections. So that was the other reason we did it.
You know, one other thing we noticed, Paul, you rolling?
Yeah, we're good.
One other thing we noticed too in Austin is the toothpaste. Right?
There are a lot of choices.
There's a lot of fluoride-free toothpaste.
Yes.
I mean, there was somebody had a camera. I think it might have been Alex going through one of the stores.
Yes, he did do that. Yes.
And we're like, that's great because, you know, in California, you can't. I mean, there might be one brand.
Are you serious?
Like
Wow.
even at Trader Joe's, you know, I'm a big fan of Trader Joe's, but you know, I think Tom's was bought by, you know, the big, you know, I think Johnson & Johnson, one of the big, you know, chemical companies purchased it, and now I think they only have one brand that's now fluoride free of their all their other choices. So we're still limited and struggling in California, whereas in Austin, it's almost a little bit more receptive. And
yeah, and there are toothpastes made with essential oils that are antibacterial. Thieves oil, I don't know if you're familiar with Thieves oil. It's an oil, I think thymol and camphor. It goes back to the Middle Ages when there was a bubonic plague. And the thieves would real thieves that would go steal and kind of scavenge bodies for wallets and jewelry and stuff. They would douse themselves in these oils to prevent contracting this illness. So that's why this is called thieves oil. And so there's toothpaste from the essential oil community that they produce, and you can get it online, different things that have these oils in them that are incredibly healthy and antibacterial, antifungal, you know, properties that you don't have to add these big chemicals. You've got these natural oils. I do believe nature has provided us with all the solutions. We don't have to go, as a chemist, I feel like I'm kind of a traitor to my industry.
Right.
But there's chemistry in everything, chemistry in nature, that these solutions have been provided to us. We just have to be smart and pick the ones that feel good, kind of resonate with our hearts, and have a really high energy to us. And
why don't you think
us.
the entire, you know, I guess chemistry community, chemist community, as far as these corporations, why don't you think they take that approach? Why do you think we go to the
It's a revenue stream.
Oh, what is it money?
It's a revenue stream. So there's a lot of, the chemical industry is billions and billions and billions of dollars, if not, I'm sorry, trillions of dollars. And, you know, nature's cheaper. So there's no money, not a lot of money in nature. No. But if you can do these petroleum industry, you know,
where you're patenting and
patents and you know, all the compounding and the synthesis, you know, these exotic things that, you know, yes, they have one effect, but there are a lot of side effects that these things have. And we always look at the one good thing, and we ignore these side effects. It's kind of like the
pharmaceutical industry,
it's pharmaceutical, exactly. So I do believe nature has the solutions. We just have to pay attention. And so rainwater.
Yeah,
so my company, Pure Rain, purified rainwater, we capture rainwater and we purify it with the most stringent processes. Reversal, yes,
May I?
please try,
I've
yes.
been dying to try it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely
That's
no
good.
chemicals at all.
Just knowing that feels so good.
Yes, yes.
Really refreshing.
It's interesting, there are, we have different groups of individuals that are very sensitive to the taste of water, and children probably have the most sensitive taste buds. In our company, we do demos, and we let children and babies taste our water, and I can't tell you how many times I've had mothers tell me, they're drinking your water. They hate water. They never drink water, and they're just can I have more? I get this, can I have some more? And the mothers are really shocked because kids are ultra sensitive and they won't put things in their bodies that don't taste good, where we are a little more numb, more numb to taste. And children are our biggest fans of our rainwater. So we capture, and what we can do, we capture the rain in Oregon, where it rains for weeks and weeks at a time, much more here than here in Texas. And we can let it rain for hours before we even turn our tanks on to capture the rain. So we flush the lower atmosphere because there are contaminants in the air, there's pollution, there's dust, all of that. So we flush that, we start to capture, and then we put it into food grade tanks, and then we do reverse osmosis, activated charcoal, and we use ozonation in our bottling process for a disinfectant instead of chlorine. So ozonation oxygenates the water and protects it against any other kind of bacterial growth that could happen down the road. And we also use ultraviolet light. So we use those physical processes instead of adding chemicals and treating with chemicals. We don't get the water from the spring, or the tap or the lake. We're actual rainwater.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love the processes. It just encompasses Mother Nature's
it does. It's the way
process,
I think it's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's so great. How receptive to, because I remember reading, where there are folks who were capturing rainwater for their own personal uses, and you've got the city stepping in and saying, no, you can't, rainwater is not free. Now, did you run across that?
Well, I think that that's going to happen more and more going forward. Right now, at least in Austin, there are incentives for people to do rainwater capture. Because if you think about it, it reduces the load on the city from storm drain standpoint. And if people will use the rainwater versus the tap, then you have water conservation. So there's two camps kind of in that realm of the water conservation people that want to promote that, which is really the good thing, and then people saying, well, you're limiting the water that's going back into the water table. So there's, you've got two camps there. At least in Austin, we are in the camp of it's good for water conservation and it limits the load on the city. So
I have a hard time swallowing the fact that you're pulling water from the table.
I know. Hello.
One home here, one little quarter of an acre. I mean,
Yeah.
is that really going to remove and damage the water table?
The scary part is if they're going to start taxing rain. If you're collecting it, are they going to tax it? Taxing, that is something I've heard before, but may or may not happen.
Well, we have the carbon tax to look forward to, don't we?
Yes.
Which I believe in Australia they just passed. Now, is Pure Rain, is it just in Texas? Can you buy it?
Yes, so we're only available in the Texas markets right now. We're across all of Texas. We're in major cities, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Fort Worth. So we're small. We're a 3-year-old company, and we're still growing.
That's great.
Yeah, we've got some markets in Southern California that are interested in us right now. We're just not able to handle that bandwidth right now. So
experiencing some growing pains.
Yeah, well, we're growing slowly.
Good.
Slowly.
Good for you. Well, I commend you on this alone. I mean, in addition to everything else that you've done, and as far as spreading the awareness, and that's kind of what we're all about here, and with the hopes of just if we can touch a few people out there to heighten our consciousness, and hopefully we can. Because as I mentioned to you in our phone call before, a lot of people say, well, Chris, what can I do? What can one man do? What can one person do? And as we mentioned earlier, Senator Johnson said it only took 5 to 6 people to call her office to make an issue a priority. Well, there you go, and that's something that I've been telling people all along. You don't have to go out and make a documentary film like I'm doing, but just having the knowledge, right?
Yes.
Educating yourself.
Yes, and your family and your close friends, yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully that spreads, and when the time comes for a collective change, you're ready, you're there, you know, we're all vibrating on the same level as far as, you know, our conscience is concerned. And I think by removing the fluoride, these contaminants, it's going to increase our vibrations.
Yes, I think what it does, it allows us to be more aware and more intuitive, because I think the information is out there for us, and we all have that ability, but we're dumbed down right now. There's so many forces hitting us. You've got radio waves, you have electromagnetic radiation that's around all of us that we didn't have 20, 30, 40 years ago. We're bombarded with all these chemicals that we weren't bombarded with before. And I think our ability to discern and trust our intuition and our heart, even though that information may not be written down or as apparent, as obvious to us, we do know those answers. And that's where the fluoridation message really gets across to people that understand children and infants, that hits their heart, that hits their soul. And to me, that's a more important message and a more effective message. And you've asked the question about how can we get more people aware. I'm a little concerned, and we've had a lot of debates in Fluoride-Free Austin about these strategies, but I like to avoid, and in this interview you can probably see this, I like to avoid talking about fluoride as a toxic chemical or fluoride as a byproduct of the fertilizer industry. To me, those are true statements, but they're inflammatory. And so a lot of people like to have answers that are kind of in the middle ground instead of kind of on that extreme edge, even though they're true.
Right.
So what Fluoride-Free Austin, and I think the most effective message for fluoridation, is to kind of go to that very center of the dose control issue about infants and children. And people understand that and stay away from those inflammatory, even though they're true, statements, because you can get more people in that middle ground.
Right.
That's my real belief. And I've seen that work better with the council here in Austin, and I've seen them call us less kooks because of that. Because even as a chemist, a lot of compounds are dangerous and toxic in high concentrations. And for example, you'll drink a soda that has carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is very corrosive in its purest, most concentrated form, but we still have it in food products. So the argument that fluoride is toxic in fertilizer industry, in rat poisoning, I really try to stay away from that, because even though it's true, it's inflammatory. We don't have to go there. We can stay in the middle ground to keep most people with us and convinced and have that high credibility.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And there's research that's been done on, in this paper I brought, I want to give you a copy. It's on recycled paper, but
oh, great. No.
But this is, I don't know if you've seen this. This got brought up by Mike Adams of the Natural News. You're probably familiar with him. This paper is phenomenal, and the title is How Unrealistic Optimism is Maintained in the Face of Reality. This goes through and describes why, when people are given information that is worse than they expected, they go into denial and they shut down. But if you give them better information than what they expected, they're okay with, and they'll accept that. They're very receptive. So there is actually physiological things that go on in the brain when people are given more negative information than what they were expecting, and so it doesn't go in. So this, to me, when I saw this, and Mike Adams talked about this on the Alex Jones show, my daughter's in graduate school in psychology, and I called her, I said, you get me, I want a preprint of that paper because I can't get it. And you have all the accounts, so you go get it for me. So she sent it to me, and it's phenomenal, Chris, that there is a blockage in the brain that causes people not to go in. And so if we can stay in that middle ground before you go to the extreme, we make more of an impact.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
So, but it's interesting. There is a group of the population that likes the extreme and gets on board. They're called first adopters, right? So they get on board really quick. And so, from a strategy standpoint, that may be the right way to do it initially. Go to that extreme, get those first adopters, but then back off.
Right.
So that you can go get that other population, the masses that go into denial, when you go into the, those inflammatory but true facts, and then kind of go to that middle ground. So to me, that's a two-stage strategy. Get the first adopters with the extreme true stuff, and they'll go look it up and they'll confirm it, but then kind of back off and do the center.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the strategy of how to get information that people maybe don't want to know, but is true.
Yeah.
So I want to give you this.
No, I appreciate that. It makes complete sense, and that's one thing we've been trying to.
It's a beautiful paper, and it's Nature Neuroscience, so it's a very credible a publication, and
well, thank you for that.
You'll understand.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And okay, so we went through solutions, and what else, Paul?
I mean, that's pretty much it. Is there anything left that you would want to talk about?
Well, let me look, because, we have all these things we testify to the council on. I think we've covered everything.
I'd love to hear what your motivation was to get started with the water.
With my company?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good question.
Good question.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. See, I'm not an interviewer. I'm just.
You are.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You are.
Trying my hardest.
Well, I started my company because there wasn't really an economically fluoride-free, ultra-pure, chemical-free water. I was actually drinking, when I first found the fluoride was an issue, I was did a lot of research, and a lot of the waters have fluoride in them. Even the pretty bottled waters, Fiji has fluoride.
Oh, I know.
They're very proud of it. Go on their website, and they're very proud of it. So many have it. And the one water that didn't, that advertised fluoride-free, was Penta. And they are, like I said, $4 a liter. Hugely expensive, but that's what I was buying because my body is the most important to me. My health is important. There wasn't an economical fluoride-free water on the market. So as I was doing more research into rainwater, and that's our planet's natural distillation process. And you can have distillated water, but those processes are just, hundreds, maybe, I'm not, commercial distillation processes are, feet and maybe 15 feet tall. But think of clouds. It's an infinite distance distillation column. So that's your planet's natural process. It's the most pure water it can get, okay? So knowing that rain was the most pure, there was a man here in Dripping Springs near Austin that was bottling rainwater, and I went and had it tested. And it was the most pure, as a chemist in the semiconductor industry and ultra pure electronic pure, chemicals that I've seen. This was the most pure water I've ever seen. And so when my chemical company, my lab that I used to test waters, when they tested it, they're like, "This is really pure. We test a lot of waters. This is ultra pure." And so that's when I knew this needed to come to the market. And so I worked with him, and a lot of droughts in Texas, as everybody's been aware, that caused a lot of issues from a supply standpoint. So I had to go someplace where it rained a lot, and it was ultra pure. So in Oregon, we found a supplier of rainwater in Oregon, and that's who we used.
And he was already set up?
He was already set up, but his purification processes weren't exactly the way we wanted. And we worked with him, and he's brilliant, and they bottle their own water as Oregon Rain in the Northwest. And so we, as Pure Rain, have this more stringent process. So we brought it to the markets. Whole Foods was our first customer here in Austin, the corporate headquarters, and they loved it. So then we branched out from there. And so now we are not the most expensive water. We're not the cheapest, but we're more economical. And in Austin, I do home delivery for people that can't afford to buy it in the stores.
Great.
So I do that still. I don't know how long I can do that, but I lift lots of water every week.
Working out.
So I deliver to those customers.
That's great. What a great story.
Yeah.
I just think that's
and it's
such a
all I
great
drink.
story.
I've drank this water for 3 years now, and like I said, I'm off all my medications, no thyroid, no allergy medicine, no migraine medicine, none of that.
Wow.
It's
You're
amazing.
glowing too. You look like you look like you're about 25 years old.
Oh, I'll be 50 next year.
No.
I'll be 49 in 2
Oh
weeks.
my
So I'm an
gosh.
old lady.
Thank God, you do that.
I am. My daughter's 26, and she's a good girl. I'm very proud of one child,
good.
one daughter.
Great.
Yeah.
Good for you. I mean, What a great story. Thank you for this too. And
You'll like this because in what you guys are doing, you need to understand that you're going to get some people initially with all the information, but then it just helps you understand that you've got to have two kind of avenues
right,
to get it. If you want to get everybody, there's two ways to do it, and you'll get more people doing that instead of just sticking with one. This is why Alex Jones, he does the extreme. Okay, but now he has Aaron Dykes who kind of does the middle ground.
Right.
So he's covering kind of both realms.
Yeah.
So you just have to be aware of that. Just have to be aware of it.
A little bit more subtle approach, and then you got your hard evidence hammering.
Yeah, because some of us like the hard one. I mean,
Yeah.
I do. That's what I respond to because I'm
going.
me too. I mean, I'm very, energetic, and I will go do the research and go validate, and then I'm on board.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they've got this issue that they don't make the connection so quickly.
Right, and it can
And
be
it's not their fault.
Right.
It gives you compassion for them of why don't they get it so quick? Why will they not listen? It just takes a little bit longer.
It's because of the fluoride.
Part of it.
Yeah, that part of
Push
it.
that I don't give a damn button.
Yeah. Well,
So.
great. Well,
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
I think, this has been
great.
awesome.
Oh,
And
you're
we're
so precious. You are. You're so precious now.
You are. This is great.
This has been totally worth it. I mean, even if we had nothing else, I'm just so glad that you let us set this up.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
And
Thank you.
I hope.
Just do a wrap up.
Yeah.
All right, let me pull back.
You want to pull back? Let me know when you're rolling, Paul. So we're just we're here in Austin, Texas, with the lovely Dr. Laura Pressley. She's welcomed us into her home today, and thank you for that, by the way.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. She has enlightened us a little bit more down the fluoride path, and has expressed some solutions. And in addition to the solutions, she's actually even produced a product here, pure rainwater, which we think is great. It's fluoride-free, chemical-free.
Yes.
And coming from a PhD chemist, it's got to be good, right?
I'm very picky.
Yes, very picky.
Very anal retentive and very picky.
A 25-year-old looking,
Oh, no,
right?
no.
50-something, But
yes.
I just want to thank you for letting us come in here today and meet with you and help us on this down our little path, our quest for truth, right? And hopefully, we can wake some people up.
Yeah, you will. And the truth is so powerful. It has an energy and a consciousness that, this misinformation and disinformation doesn't have. So you guys are incredibly powerful. And I want to say thank you for what you're doing for all of us. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
That's
Keep it
very
up.
nice. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We're going to need the luck. We're going to need the help, right? Well, I think that's it, huh?
That's it.
All right.
Fantastic.
See ya.